Hello all, welcome to the Mastering Up YouTube channel. So let's start with our class of the foundations in plant physiology and anatomy. Today in this class we are going to study about the primary versus secondary growth of plants. Actually earlier we have discussed what are the primary and the secondary plant growths. So now we will see the difference between these two. Okay, so let's start with our class. So as we always do, let's start with the introduction. Plant grows and develops through a highly organized process that allows them to increase in size and adapt to the environment. This growth occurs in two main phases, that is primary growth and secondary growth. Okay, so first plant needs to grow its length, then also they need to increase its width and all. So these all are the things of the present in the primary and secondary growth. Okay, now coming to the two types of growth. Plant growth is a continuous and dynamic process that allows them to survive, adapt and thrive to various environments. This growth can be categorized into two major types, that is primary growth and secondary growth. So let's see what are the primary and secondary growth. First of all, let's go with the primary growth. Primary growth is responsible for the elongation of the plant body, enabling roots to grow deeper into the soil and shoots to extend upward and outward. It occurs mainly at the tip of the root and shoot due to the activity of apical meristems. Okay, so while studying about the meristem class, about the meristematic tissues, we know that the apical meristem, as the name suggests, they are present on the apex of root and shoot. So this one helps in the elongation process. So the primary growth is mainly responsible for the elongation of the plant. So they are majorly happens in the tip of the root and tip of the shoot, elongation of the shoot and elongation of the root. Now coming to secondary growth. Secondary growth contributes to the increase in thickness or girth of the plant, particularly in woody plants. This type of growth is facilitated by lateral meristems such as vascular cambium and cork cambium. Together these growth processes play a crucial role in the development, support and longevity of plants. Okay, so this basically the primary growth is mainly for the elongation and secondary growth is the thickness or girth of the plant. Okay, so the meristems involved in the secondary growth are lateral meristems such as vascular cambium and cork cambium. These are also we discussed in the previous classes and all. So major difference between the primary and secondary growth is that primary growth majorly it is responsible for the elongation and secondary growth is responsible for the thickness or girth of the plant. And also the secondary growth, it is majorly particularly present in the woody plants. Okay, now coming to the primary plant growth. Primary plant growth refers to the increase in length or height of a plant which occurs due to the cell division in specialized regions called apical meristems. This type of growth happens at the tip of the root and shoot, allowing the plant to grow taller and its root to extend deeper into the soil. So the location is apical meristem found in the root tips and shoot tips, and the growth direction is vertical. Okay, so the upward and downward growth is present in this primary growth, and the tissues formed are protoderm, that is epidermis, outermost layer, and the ground meristem, ground tissues like parenchyma, and procambium is vascular tissues like xylem and phloem. Okay, so here you can see the case of primary growth. The shoot apex and root apical meristems are there. They helps in the lateral, helps in the growth of the what you say helps in the elongation of the plant. And this case of lateral meristem, it helps in the secondary growth. Now coming to the secondary growth. Secondary plant growth is the increase of the thickness or girth of the stem and roots, primarily in woody plants like trees and shrubs. This growth happens after primary growth and is driven by lateral meristem, especially the vascular and cork cambium. Okay, so one more major difference is primary growth happens first and it is followed by the secondary growth. Okay, so now tissues involved are vascular cambium and cork cambium. Vascular cambium, we already know it produces xylem towards inside and phloem towards outside, and cork cambium, it produces cork that replaces the epidermis. Now result, formation of annual rings in trees. Okay, so there are we can identify or we can find the age of the tree through counting of the annual rings. These are ring-like structure present on the trees, and by counting the trees rings we can identify the age of the plant. So this cork cambium is responsible. This secondary growth is responsible for the formation of annual rings from seasonal xylem growth. Okay, annual rings are formed due to the seasonal xylem growth. It forms every year. Now development of wood and bark, it is also a result of the secondary plant growth and increased ability to support the plant and transport water and nutrients over the larger distances. Now locations, they are present in stems, lead to the thickening of the trunks and branches and roots, which help support the larger above ground growth. Okay, so these are the location, result and tissues involved in secondary plant growth. However, secondary plant growth, here you can see lateral meristem is there, vascular and cork cambium. Due to the formation of this, they will increase the girth of the plant. Okay, so they will increase the thickness. Now let's study the basic difference, primary versus secondary plant growth. First of all, coming to the definition, for primary growth, there growth that results in an increase in the length of the root or shoots, and for secondary, it is the growth that results in an increase in the thickness or girth of the stems and roots. Okay. Now types of meristem involved, apical meristem is involved, and here lateral meristem like vascular and cork cambium. And this apical meristem, they are present at the tip of the root and shoots. Location of growth occurs at the root tip, shoot tips and young leaves. In case of secondary, it occurs in older regions of stem roots, especially in woody plants. Now tissues formed are primary tissues. Epidermis is formed, primary xylem, phloem, cortex and pith. Pith is formed from the primary, it is also formed from primary meristem like protoderm, procambium and ground meristem. Coming to the secondary growth, secondary xylem wood, secondary phloem, cork, phyloderm, produced by vascular cambium and cork cambium, lateral meristems. Now the visible effect is results in case of primary growth, it results in the elongation of the plant, formation of new leaves, flowers, root tips, etc. And in case of secondary growth, it results in the thickening of the stem and roots, formation of the bark and annual growth rings. Occurrence in plant, it is found in all vascular plants, monocot, dicots, young gymnosperms, and in case of secondary, it is mostly in dicots and gymnosperms, not in most monocots, because majorly this dicot and gymnosperm, they are bodies. Now coming to cambium involved, cambium is not involved in case of primary growth. Growth is due to the division of apical meristem, but in case of secondary growth, there involves a vascular cambium and cork cambium. Now timeline happens during early stages of the plant development and continues throughout the life of herbaceous plant. So the known woody plants and all, they have a continuous life. Throughout the life, they shows this apical meristem, apical growth. There you can say primary growth. But in case of secondary, it begins after the primary growth and typically in woody perennials and older stems and roots. Now role in plant body. The primary is to establish the primary body of the plant responsible for reaching light and water, for light shoot and for water roots. Now secondary, it contributes to the secondary body of the plant, provides structural support and protection as the plant matures. That is case of secondary. And example, a seedling growing taller, the root tip extending deeper into the soil. And case of secondary, a tree trunk becoming thicker each year, bark forming on older trees. These are the examples of primary and secondary. So this is the picture. You can see there is an outward growth, right? Outward growth is present, that is in one direction. Here you can see apical growth is there through the shoot, and this root growth is also there. So these are called, and the branch formation, and also these are involved in the primary growth. And the secondary growth, you can say the thickness is increasing. From the lateral sides, thickness are increasing. So this is the case of secondary growth. You can see the picture difference, you can identify the difference. Okay, if you can take screenshot, want to take screenshot and take, because with this picture you can really understand what's happening. Now the additional note is there. The primary growth details. Apical meristem give rise to protoderm, procambium and ground meristem. It occurs throughout the life in herbaceous plants. And in secondary growth details, it's vascular cambium. It produces secondary xylem and produces secondary phloem outwards. Secondary xylem inwards and phloem outwards. Then cork cambium, it produces cork outwards and produces phyloderm inwards. It leads to the formation of growth rings or annual rings, which is used to age the trees. Now mainly, let's have a summary or a recap. That is, primary growth, it increases the length, and secondary growth, it increases the width. For the conclusion, primary and secondary growth are essential processes in life cycle of the vascular plant, each playing a distinct and crucial role in plant development. Primary growth enables plants to increase in length, helping roots explore the soil and shoot reach light. It forms primary plant body and it is driven by apical meristems. Secondary growth, on the other hand, it allows plants, especially woody ones, to grow in thickness, providing structural support, enhanced conduction and protection through the formation of wood and bark. This is driven by the lateral meristems such as vascular cambium and cork cambium. So it is basically everything that I already told you in the previous slides. So this is just a conclusion. Together these growth processes, okay, together with this primary growth and secondary growth, it enables the plant to expand, strengthen, adapt to their environments and survive over many seasons. Understanding both types of growth gives insight into how a tiny seedling can grow into a towering tree. So you can see we are just planting a single seed, okay, and through all these activities they just growing up to like a tower. These trees, you can see the large high trees and all, they basically do this have this primary and secondary growth, primary growth followed by the secondary growth to form such a big huge tree. So you know how beautiful and wonderful this nature is. So okay, let us just have a quick recap of what we have already done. We went through the introduction of what is growth and what is primary and secondary growth. We had a quick recap about the difference between primary and secondary growth. Then we studied about the location, growth direction, tissues formed in primary growth. Here's a picture. And for the secondary growth also, we tissues involved results of the secondary growth and the location. Also had a picture of secondary growth. Now then we had a table conveying the difference between the primary and secondary growth, including all the features. Okay, so you just I think you can just study this table, this 2-page table, and most of your doubts will be cleared about this primary and secondary growth. Then we had a very beautiful diagram depicting both the very major difference between the primary and secondary growth. You can also see that the production of leaf and production of branches are also a result of primary growth, okay, because that is also elongating, right? So you can say that is also the what you can say, it's a result of the primary growth. Additionally, we also just had a recap of what these additional things happening in the primary and secondary growth. Then the major thing you need to learn that primary growth, it is responsible for the length, increase in the length, and secondary growth is responsible for increasing the width. Then we went to the conclusion. So I hope you had a very nice class. I think you studied something. If you have any doubts, just ask in the comment. Okay, so that's all for the class. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you all. Let's meet in the next class.